Thank you very much, everybody, again for joining us. Today we're talking about geo capabilities, specifically in SaaS. And today what we wanted to do is actually take you through a demonstration of what geo looks like, again, in the SaaS environment. And then Neil, my colleague, will be actually hosting the Q&A session as well at the end of the demonstration. We'll be talking about how you can actually leverage location-based analytics, interactive mapping and geospatial data as well as part of your Qlik estate. And as always, as I mentioned before, if you've got any questions about this, please do pop them in the chat box and we will look at them at the end of the session. Just another friendly reminder of everybody who's actually helping with the webinar today. So Chris will be doing the demonstration, obviously myself, I look a bit different, I've got longer hair now, and then Neil as well at the end, and each of us will be putting our cameras on when we are doing a little bit as part of the webinar as well. So for today, we'll be talking about geoanalytics in the SaaS environment. That's not to say that it isn't available in other elements of the Qlik estate as well. So it is available for Qlik Sense customers who have an on-prem deployment as well. So if you are, wowed by what we show you today and you're considering it because you are on an on-prem deployment, just get in touch with us and we can have those conversations with you and talk you through how it works for you as well a little bit differently. But one thing to note is that geoanalytics isn't actually just a map visualization tool, but it is also a location-based analytical capability tool as well. So it can show you things like clustering, heat maps, and even walking distances if you're, maybe a retail premises or a retail business as well. So again, it's not just mapping, it can help you reveal crucial geospatial information, and it can help obviously expose any hidden geographical information that you may want to kind of take advantage of as well as part of, sort of the reporting that you do for your business. Again, important to note that it is also available for QlikView users as well as Qlik Sense. So if you are an existing QlikView user, please do get in touch with us and we can talk you through how it would be a bit more applicable for your business as well. But the purpose of today is just to show you what is capable using Geo. So it's easy generally to get started with geoanalytics, and Chris will show you that a little bit later on in the demonstration. It offers an on-the-fly lookup of common place names for you, even countries and states, depending on where you are based. So it's really easy to start creating maps of your own location information specific to you, which is one of the biggest things that Qlik actually is quite good at doing anyway. There are several different types of visualization options as well, so you're not always having to have a look at maybe a map of a country or maps of certain states. Chris again will be showing you all of the different kinds of maps that are available and different visualizations that you can use as well. One thing to note, and that's quite important actually, it helps you work with points. So generally when you are looking at kind of geo data, you will be looking at locations, but if you want to actually head towards a specific location, you can work with points and actually use different symbols to actually make more sense of that, and it can help you become a little bit more dynamic as well. Another good thing about this is that you can actually do overview layers. So if you wanted to actually, let's say, for example, look at one area, but then look at something else on top of that area, it can help you actually visualize that a little bit more and provide you with an overview of your data that could be potentially quite dense as well. So with Geo, it actually features both routing and lookup services as well, such as geometric analytics as well. You can create routing calculations, but that doesn't mean that it can get rid of things like Google Maps, because that's really quite simple to use. And you can actually blend different types of external public sources of data as well as internal sources. And one thing that I find that's quite exciting, and it might just be sort of my personal opinion, but you can actually use and import your own spatial data. So you might have a CAD design of a warehouse that you'll that's as part of your business, and you might want to see how that warehouse has been used and which part of it's been used better than other parts, and start figuring out what you want to do with that space that you're kind of wanting to maximize on. So yeah, it's quite exciting in the sense that you can start bringing in that data and actually providing your own mapping capabilities on that, and it also does do indexing of the geodata as well inside your data model. So it always works with your data to begin with, but it really does let you understand your spaces a little bit better as well. So that's just a high level overview from me in terms of the sort of capabilities that it will provide you with. But now I'll be handing over to Chris, who will just do the demonstration for you and show you what I've been talking about.
Sorry, I was on mute. Can you confirm you can see my screen, Sharon?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'm going to hold my hands up and just say that this is an adapted demo. We did a run through yesterday and I got told it was a bit boring. So I've tried to make it a little bit more fun and engaging. So I'm going to be covering geo specifically in SaaS, as Sharon mentioned before. Largely, it's exactly the same as if you did things on client managed. They've just reinvented it. They redesigned it specifically for SaaS, so it actually uses a server-side extension. So Qlik Sense geo operations enable geographic calculations and functions to solve problems such as determining how many customers are living within a 15-minute drive of a particular location. It could be not just limited to drive time, so you could do things like based on walk time, based on a straight line. It could be 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then you can get a real catchment area and see what your client base or how far they are. Equally, it doesn't have to be based on duration. It can also be based on distance as well. So if you want to do a 10, 15, 20 mile radius of a particular location, you can then look at all your stores on a map and then see where they kind of cannibalize each other's territory there. Other use cases include things like plotting a warehouse schematic, and then you can use things like your picker data to then find hotspots and then optimize where particular products, your high volume products are positioned within your warehouse to make it more efficient. Other use cases include custom sales areas, being able to map the closest location from A to B. So if you've got, let's say, looking at the map on the right hand side there, you can see we've got postal code areas alongside airports. So if you want to see your closest airport, you can use the geo operation, the closest function, to then map you to your closest airport in that particular case. And then you can also use it for display purposes as well. So if you've got large amount of points, as you can see on this screen here, we can use things like the binning and cluster functions to then just minimize what's in view at any one time. As you zoom in, you can then go down to the further detail. At the bottom of our screens here, we've got the complete function list. It's exactly the same list whether you're on client managed or you're in the SaaS version. And here you can see where it's compatible. So all functions can be used within the script, the load script when you reload your application. But there's also a couple at the bottom here that can be used in routing or travel areas. So those can be used within actual charts, and then therefore they can be dynamically calculated on the fly. If you don't have latitude, longitude coordinates, there are open source data sets available online for free. You don't have to pay for those. But if you want to get precision and up-to-date geocoding, so mapping a latitude, longitude to a street address, or reverse geocoding, there's an additional license which has a set of commercials attached to it, which you can use within your application, so you're not having to download files and load them into your applications. So that gives you a very brief overview of the capabilities in terms of Qlik Sense. But now we're actually going to move on to actually applying this to a real use case, or an old use case. So we're going to step back in time, back to where Neil was, but probably around about his mid to late 20s. So I'm going to take you back to or a use case when it finally loads. There we go, which is John Snow. So back in 1854, back in, there was a cholera outbreak. So we're familiar with outbreaks these days, with pandemics. This was a local epidemic in London. And John Snow wanted to be able to visualize deaths, and he had an assumption that where at the time people thought that cholera was spread through, was airborne, John Snow actually had an assumption that it was actually transmitted via water. So what he did was he took all the locations of all the deaths and he plotted a line per death within a particular location. So where you can see a stack of these, that's where a large portion of deaths were held. And he also plotted on there the pumps there as well. In a modern day version, so I like to think that John Snow would choose Qlik to visualize his data. We can see here that we can, instead of plotting lines, we can use bubbles, and we can use the size of the bubbles to represent the number of deaths there. We've also plotted the pumps there as well. So again, I've just put single points there, but they could be icons if you wanted to. They don't have to just be bubbles on there. But the size of the bubbles, if we look on the right-hand side here, show the number of deaths within a particular location. If we want to display that a bit more differently, so we can get a definitive answer of which pump might be causing this outbreak, we could switch over to a density map, or a heat map as it's usually called. So here we can see that the pump closest to the heat source, so closest to the red and the white spots there, we can make an assumption that that is the pump that's likely causing these deaths there. And if we zoom in enough, we can see that we've got the Broad Street pump right in the center of that outbreak. As an alternative, so now we've looked at it visually, we've just plotted these points on a map. If we actually want to use a geo operation, we could use something like the closest function to map each individual death to the closest pump. So I'm just going to step back and go into the data load editor. I'm not going to go too much into the scripting that's involved here, but just to give you a little idea of what's involved in there. So as I mentioned before, we're using a server-side extension called Geo Operations, which is free with your SaaS environment. And the benefit of it being with SaaS is that you don't have to maintain those server-side extensions. They get automatically updated along with your Qlik software there as well. And just to add the other caveat, this is different, the scripting compared to the client managed. So the client managed has a nice wizard interface, whereas the SaaS just has a short bit of script, typically just a few lines that you just need to add in there. So here you can see I've passed in two different data sources. I've passed in a table, which is an internal table from a previous loaded section there, and I've also passed in a CSV file and I've specified the details there. But all this is doing is it's going to pass in the deaths, and it's going to pass in the pump data, and it will just map the deaths to the closest pump based on a maximum distance there. So I've said the maximum distance should be 10,000 meters, but you can customize that to your requirements. And I've also said just map it on the closest pump. Now you could say map it to the 3 closest pumps and so on. But once that data is loaded, I'm just going to nip back over to my closest map here, and now we can then visualize that differently, and we can actually see the lines to the closest pump. If I was to look at the original updated version, it might be quite difficult to spot where these outliers actually which is the closest pump there. It looks quite similar from the Marlborough to the Broad Street pump there. But if we go back to the closest, you can see it's clearly lined, and we can visualize that differently and more clearly, and therefore make more informed decisions based on using the geo operations there. And here you can see a definitive answer that it was the Broad Street pump which caused the cholera outbreak. Equally, we can filter this down, so if we wanted to focus on that, we can select a particular pump, and then we can see all the data associated to that. So you've got the same associations, you've got the same capabilities with all the other objects to be able to filter that data down and really drill into those deaths, the locations of those as well. In addition to just using the load script for geo operations, we also have the possibility of using some of those within a chart and dynamically calculate it on the fly. So if I was John and I really wanted to do some analysis into this data, I might be interested in understanding how people go to the pumps, how do they travel to these watering pumps. And here you can see that I'm using the travel areas. I can pass in various different parameters. And if I just go into edit mode here, I can show you what one of those expressions then looks like. So if I go into my layer and I go into the right one here, and I expand my expression, you can see here I'm using the server-side extension again, the geo operations extension, and there I'm asking for a travel area based on the cost value, which I've variabilized, and the transportation mode and the cost unit. So I've actually put these in variables, and I'm using these input controls now to then state how it should calculate these travel areas. So if I just focus in on Broad Street, because we've already determined that that is the likely source, here you can see that if I move my slider across here, that most of the deaths surrounding the Broad Street pump actually happen within a 9-minute walking distance. Now, if I wanted to, I could change this to be by bird, so just in a straight line. I could look at it by car or truck, but back then, and Neil might be able to tell me more about this, they probably didn't have those, but you've also got bike there as well. So if I was to switch this to be by bike, and again, this doesn't have to be by duration, I can do it by kilometers as an example. It will recalculate this on the fly, and there I can see a better group and a better idea of what kind of radius that pump is then serving. And lastly, what I'll look at for this particular use case is then routing as well. So within here, routing, as well as the travel areas, you can either do this via the load script or you can do it on the fly. If I wanted to look at this particular depth here, I can then actually calculate on the fly the route that they would likely take in terms of the quickest or the shortest based on distance or duration. So in here, you can see I've got this, I'm using this expression. I pass in the original location points where they're leaving from, and then the destination there as well. If I want, I can specify where it should be based on distance or by duration. And there I can see how long it would have taken. So roughly 3¼ minutes, or just over 0.8 kilometers in distance. If I remove that selection, I can then get a good idea and remove the pump. I can get a good idea in terms of the overall distance or average distance that each depth would have traveled to their nearest, to their closest pump. And again, I can do that by distance or duration. And the key takeaway for that is that you can use these calculations, you can use the results of the geo operations to get further insights into your data and make more informed decisions. Just before I wrap up today, I'm just going to move over to some other examples. So here we've got Canadian wildfire analysis. So here you can see at the top, we're using simply just bubbles again, and we can then use color to determine where the number of fires are more prevalent. So here we can see that there are more fires in the south west area of Canada there as well, and that we can use the size of the bubbles to represent the size of the fire. Equally, you can use switches again to change those, so we can use the color to determine the size of the fire or the count using the size of the bubble there. If I just move over to a couple more examples, we also have this shown in a heat map, which when you've got large data sets, it becomes a lot clearer when you're doing this. If I just select a particular value, you can get and see where more or fewer fires are occurring. And then lastly, I'll just cover the binning operation. So binning is a map layer that you can use, and this provides you an equal size bin spread across a particular location. So here we can see we've got a concentration of fires happening again in British Columbia, and we're using colour in there to show the number of fires occurring. So that just wraps up this my short demo, and I'll hand you back to Sharon and Neil.
Thanks, Chris. So I guess now it just comes down to questions. If anybody's got any, Neil, have you seen any
We've got
questions
one or
come
two.
through?
We've got one or two. One or
Brilliant,
two
okay.
asking just how I put up with Chris's rudeness, but that's just how it is. Yeah, so we've got Angela who's asking, can she have a bit more information about, you talked about mapping a building. Now, I think I can actually answer that one myself, Angela, because this was one of my prospects that we were talking to, where in their case, they were using a warehouse for storage and picking of goods. And so they were trying to test a hypothesis that they were storing goods in the wrong area, i.e. frequently picked items were being stored further away from the packing zone. And so we did an analysis with heat map, a bit like Chris showed you there. And that resulted in them being able to better organize the warehouse. So that was a good example of one. Hopefully that answers a bit about what you're asking for, but yeah, by all means, drop me a line direct if not. Richard's asking, this might be one for you, Sharon, are there any additional licenses involved?
No, there isn't. You will get these as part of your existing either subscription. Well, I think it is more subscription, but if you've got any specific needs and I need to know what kind of deployment you have, then I can come back to you on that as well.
Yeah, I guess it will depend where they are in their journey on that, won't they? But yeah, Richard, one of us will get back to you on that. And then I've got Paul saying, okay, so this is linked to it really. He's got Qlik Sense on client managed license at the moment, and he believes he's entitled to a subscription. He believes he's entitled to a SaaS tenant, which I know his license. I'm pretty sure he is. So he's asking, is it easier to build on client managed than it is in SaaS, or the other way around? Chris, is that one for you? I would suspect SaaS, but
Either, to be honest with you, it's no real difference, to be honest with you, in terms of building this. You pass it parameters and it will calculate. It's fairly simple.
It's got more built into it though, hasn't it, that you haven't got to on the SaaS side? And we've got. Oh, okay, I may have misunderstood that. And then I've only got one more, which Abdul asking about route mapping. So I know you covered a little bit about it there, but can you just give us a bit more detail on the sorts of things you could do with that, Chris?
Yes, so you can obviously pass it a originating field or parameter and a destination, and it will map based on I think it uses TomTom, or it used to use TomTom, and I've done a lot of testing and it produces similar results or identical results to Google Analytics. So it's not going to replace your Google Analytics, but it will it will show you the best route or shortest route possible, either by those different parameters. So you've got car, bike, pedestrian, and truck. So yeah, it can give you those results.
Even for my penny farthing. Cheeky
Absolutely, Neil.
No, well, that's it from a questions point of view. Nobody else has got any outstanding ones at the moment. So, Sharon,
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, guys. So we hope that you found this quite useful. As always, if you would like to know a little bit more on how Geo can work specifically for your businesses, please do get in touch with us, and we'll be more than happy to go through, the sort of informational process with you. Our next webinar will be, sorry, yes, Neil?
Yeah, we have got another question. I do beg your pardon.
Okay, that's all right.
Cutting across there. Says Tracy's asking about have we got any examples in the healthcare industry? Well, yes, we have actually. We've got a couple. So one of our customers, Chris knows a little bit more about this than I do, but they do home healthcare, and so an important part for them was tracking where their nurses are, and obviously keeping the skills of those different nurses, and then assigning the right skill set to the patient. I think that was the use case, Chris, wasn't it? That's used by the healthcare company.
Yeah, exactly that. So they also have rules around how much it costs per mile. So I think it's within a 60, 90, 120 mile radius, the cost goes up per mile. So they want to be able to make sure that they assign the right nurse, the closest nurse to the patient. They also use it for when they're hiring new nurses. If they've got a cluster of patients that aren't particularly close to their existing nurses, they know where they should hire the next nurse if there's one available on the market. Yeah.
Hopefully, Tracy, that answers your question. But again, I'll come back to you direct on that as well, so you can drill down a bit further on it. Back to you, Sharon. I think.
Thanks.
Nobody else is jumping
Yeah,
in. No.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so all I wanted to say at the end of this was that our next webinar will be on the 24th of June. The time is yet to be confirmed, but we'll be sending out some emails with more information about that. It will be covering on-demand app generation. So yes, if that's something that you're interested in, or if you have missed any of our previous webinars as well, we will be sending some information on links to rewatch those as well for you. But thank you everybody for joining us. We hope you found it really, really useful, and we will wrap it up there. Take care. Bye.
Thanks all.